Of course, we talk a lot about early detection when it comes to the medical world, but there's a new study now saying that's true for people as far as diagnosing ADHD.
And here to tell us more is our parenting expert, Dr. Sheryl Ziegler, because ADHD is something that we were talking about, like you didn't hear it talked about years ago. Then you heard it talked about a lot, and now we're talking about life expectancy related to it?
I know. So to be clear, ADHD became a diagnosis in the 1980s. And so we have been studying it throughout. We are now to the point where there's a study that came out of Cambridge in January. They studied 30,000 people with ADHD who had been diagnosed with ADHD and found that for men, they had a 7-year less life expectancy, and for women, 9 years
Oh my
less.
gosh.
Is that a straight line, do you think, or is there some other component that becomes a piece of that puzzle?
Yes, well, I wanted to know too, because this is, somewhat new research. Apparently there was some other research that wasn't as direct. This one's more direct because they put the amount of years. And so what it is because when you have ADHD, you are impulsive. You don't always keep up with appointments. You are not always focused and remembering to go to doctor's appointments, keeping things in order, taking your medication. So because of the symptoms of ADHD, it looks like you have this lesser life expectancy.
When you say early detection, you talk about ADHD, I tend to think of people being diagnosed with ADHD in grade school.
Yes.
But you're talking about people of any age being diagnosed with it. It's important if you're even my age or a fourth grader.
Yes, one of the articles that came out around this was in The Atlantic, and the person writing it was saying, I got diagnosed, I think maybe in my late 30s, and oh my gosh, this was a game changer for me. So I think we do have, like we were talking about, almost 10% of US children are diagnosed with ADHD. So it seems like we've got the diagnosis in childhood down, but it's the people who may be older or the adolescents. And when you get to adolescence, there's also the thought you outgrow this. Well, there are a good amount of people, about 30% of people who are diagnosed as children will outgrow it when they get older adolescence, young adulthood. But there are also a whole segment of people that may be older that never got diagnosed. So if you are forgetful, if you are always losing your keys, if you feel like you do to-do lists over and over, you take one, you make another, you've got sticky notes everywhere, those kinds of things, I think what happens with ADHD is we kind of joke about it, we think that it's light. But this study really put a light on this, like it's actually not, because of the consequences when you become older are really pretty serious.
Wow.
I know.
So treatment, is it always medication? I mean, you hear about Adderall all the time. It's not necessarily?
It's not. Really, gold standard treatment may be both, but always involves
medication
and behavioral intervention.
So
usually, definitely with a child, you start off with the behavioral interventions, you come up with plans and executive functioning, and you help them figure out those things. If it works, great, you just leave it there. If that's not helpful, then you add on a medication, but you still keep on the therapy. And that's the part people have to remember. Doing both together is really quite effective for most people. So really wanting to emphasize this, because now we see, like, when we're not talking about kids, this is not a shorter life expectancy for kids. This is for adults, because for kids, there's presumably an adult who's taking care of all those things for them. It's when you become an adult.
And then it just becomes a matter of actually being diagnosed instead of just your friends telling you you're goofy or whatever. You need to see someone and find out if professionally you are possibly someone who should be getting one of those treatments. Dr. Sheryl Ziegler, we will talk about this more, I'm sure, but thank you for joining us today.
You're welcome.